Hello. And over the years, I've found that the problems that students have most, one of the biggest problems that they have most, is in factoring quadratic equations. So in this video, I want to go over factoring a quadratic equation so that in depth, so that you can understand it. Let's take a look at it. Okay, so I want to take a look at one of the most common quadratic equations that you will run across. This x squared plus 5x plus 6. I've seen this many, many times. So I think this is a good example for us to get an idea of how to factor quadratic equations. Now, when I look at this, the first thing I do, I don't stress. I just draw up two sets of parentheses. No values in here, just the two sets of parentheses. Then look at your x squared. Now, only way I can get x squared is to place an x here and an x here. So I do that automatically. If it was a 2x squared, choose a prime number. The only way you can get 2x squared is to place a 2x and then an x. So that's the idea. Get that x, set up the parentheses, put the x's in there. Next, look at this number here and this number here. I want a number that multiplies to be this number and adds to be that number. Now I look at the factors of 6, 6 and 1, and 3 and 2 are the only factors. Now I can see 3 and 2 will give me 5 if I add them. I can see 6 and 1, the key, 6 and 1 is if I subtract them, I can still get 5. So that's why you break that down. So that's real quick. You already know 3 steps. Now, the idea is just to try each one. With experience, you'll know which one to try. I can see here I have a positive sign. I can see that I'm going to add 3 and 2 to get 5. If I had some sort of negative signs or whatever, I might subtract 1 from 6 to get a positive 5. If I had a negative 5 here, I would subtract a positive 1 from a negative 6 and get 5 probably. So let's look at that. Now, I said, okay, 3 and 2, because I'm going to add 3 and 2 to get 5, I'm going to multiply 3 and 2 to get 6. So I reverse it to check it. X times x, x squared, we said that, x times 2, 2x, x, and so now that's done with that. Now 3 times x, 3x, 3 times 2 is 6. We combine these two middle guys, we get 5x, so we got x squared plus 5x plus 6. That worked out. Let's look at a second example. This time, same problem, but we see we have a negative 5x here. So same thing. Two sets of parentheses. Place my x's in. Because I have x squared, place my x's in. Break this guy down. What multiplies to be this and adds to be that? I have a negative 5 here. So I already know I can go a negative 3 and a negative 2. That'll give me a negative 5. But a negative 6 and a positive 1 will also give me a negative 5. But look, a negative 6 and a positive 1 is going to give me a negative 6. A negative 3 and a negative 2 is going to give me a positive 6. So let's try both cases. Look, I have negative 6 and positive 1 because I'm looking for this negative 5. So I get x squared plus x minus 6x minus 6. We see we have this minus 6. That's going to, when I add those together, I do get my negative 5, but I have a negative 6. So let's try the other way. We see negative times negative is going to give me a positive. So that's the one you really want to try. With experience, you do that. Otherwise, just try it and see what happens. Doesn't take long just to work it out. So we have negative 3 and negative 2 is the only way I can get a positive 6. So I go x times x, x squared, x times negative 2, x, negative 3 times x, negative 3x, negative 3, negative 2, a positive 6. Combine these two, negative 3 and 2, negative 2 gives me that negative 5. And I have that positive 6, so that checks out. Let's look at the same problem. In this case, we have a negative 6. Okay, so now we have a negative 6, x squared plus 5x minus 6. Okay, two sets of parentheses automatically. Now, only way I can get x squared, x, x. I'm going to break this guy down. Okay, I have 6 times 1 and 3 times 2. We know that. Now I want to get a negative 6. So in order to get a negative here, when I'm multiplying, it has to be a positive negative. So that means a negative 6 times a positive 1. Well, the question is, what should be the sign of the larger sign of the 6? Should it be a negative 6 or a positive 6? Well, I say this number is positive, so the sign of the larger number must be positive. I know I got 6 and 1. The sign of the larger number has to be positive for me to get a positive 5. So I go x times x, x squared, x times negative 1, negative x. 6 times x, 6x. 6 times a negative 1, a negative 6. So I have my negative 6, but see here, I have this positive 6x and a negative x. That's going to give me a positive 5x, so that checks out. So that's how you want to do that. Okay, so basically, let's run through it real quick. We set up our two sets of parentheses. We look at this guy here, look at its, break it down into its factors. Usually there are not that many. We can see here we only have two ways to break down 6 is 3 and 2 and 6 and 1. And then you work it to get the sign. Work it to get the sign of this middle guy. We want the larger number in some cases to be the sign of the middle guy. In other cases, we're looking at, well, I have a positive here and a negative here. So that's going to be a little tricky. Sometimes you just try it. But the only way I can get a positive here and a negative here is to multiply by two negatives. So that's why this part was the solution. And the only way to get, and so if we look at our first case here, we had everything was positive. So everything up here should probably be positive. And if I go 6 plus 1, that's going to give me 7. So I know it's probably going to be 3 plus 2 to give me 5. So let's give you an example to try. Try this example. Okay, if you want to stop the video and try that, I'm going to show the solution now in 3, 2, 1. There's your solution. Same steps. I have x squared minus 2x plus 1. Okay, before I do anything, two sets of parentheses, x. I already got that part done. Now I'm looking at this 1, my factors of 1 are 1 and 1. But also remember, the factors of a positive 1 is negative 1 times negative 1. Okay, so negative 1 times negative 1. So I know I have this negative 2. I'm going to have to add negative and negative to get that. So that's the tip off right there. So recognize that there are different ways to look at these problems. Just practice them. And so you should be able to work your way through this. And you see, I have that negative gave me here. This negative gave me this positive here. Okay. So hopefully you'll be able to factor problems without thinking about and struggling with these problems as most students do. Uh, that is so hopefully that's helpful to you, and I'm always here to help. Thank you very much. That's a longer, kind of a longer video, but it's necessary for factoring. And just look at those steps, and you'll be able to factor most problems, and you'll be on your way to being very strong at factoring. Thank you very much.